Welcome to the Manly Mythical Story Emporium. I'm your host, Thurston J.Y. Manley. And today's theme is Sixth Sense. Yes, Sixth Sense. Not the movie, but just Sixth Sense. Not the movie with the boy saying, I see dead people. But Sixth Sense with J.Y. saying, I see black people. No, not really, but I do see black people quite often. They're mostly in my house. But anyway, today's theme is Sixth Sense, like I said, and it's going to be based on that, non-bodily, without understanding vision that you have. Almost like the Thundercats when he asks for sight beyond sight, when he puts that sword up to his face, having sight beyond sight. Or just that feeling that you have, that something you can't understand or you just move off of anyway, but you don't know how it came to you through the universe. That third eye be watching. Well, today's stories are going to revolve around my Sixth Sense of experiences. My first story will be called Downtown Lunch. Going to lunch downtown. And I had a little feeling about it. So that's going to be a good story. It's going to be interesting. The second story will be, what's wrong with my boy? I sensed something was going on with my boy. I got two boys. The oldest is often referred to as the boy. And I had a sixth sense of feeling about him. I reacted physically about this experience with him, and I just can't explain it without the story. So you're going to have to listen to the second story about what's wrong with my boy. First story, Downtown Lunch. If you would like to suggest other themes for me to use, because like I said in the previous podcast, the themes that I'm getting are coming from the Triad Storytelling Guild, and they only provide the themes for 1 year. But I am giving you 2 stories every week, which means, 12, 52, it don't really work out like that. And I'm going to need more themes. But I got a theme for today. I have a theme for the next week. We're going to flip that year back around, and I'll post up what the themes are and where I got them on my Instagram, which is Manly Mythical Story. And if you want to add some, you can comment on that photo or send me a direct message or send me an email at manlystory@gmail.com. But my Instagram, Manly Mythical Story on Instagram. Right after this ad, you're going to be able to enjoy 2 stories that deal with the Sixth Sense, my Professor X abilities of being able to have that lion-o, sight beyond sight, Sixth Sense. First story, Downtown Lunch. Second story, what's wrong with my boy? Please enjoy right after this ad for Anchor. Thank you. Back in 2005, I worked at an embroidery place. It was a franchise that does embroidery, screen printing, and other promotional items. And it was ran by one of my college roommates' parents. And I would help run the store, do embroidery, do screen printing. I could make my own schedule, but it definitely involved a lot of hours of doing the work or doing the sales for the work, which I enjoy because you got a lot of freedom. It's a small business, and I was supporting a friend and a friend was supporting me. It was very enjoyable. My wife, however, she worked for a call center, and every now and then she would get an odd shift, late shift, second shift. I don't know what the shift would be called, but a shift that didn't run during my shift. So I had to say what the shift is going on, and she would come for lunch with me when she had one of those other shifts. And when she would come for lunch, we would often take a nice little excursion to downtown Greensboro. Now, in downtown Greensboro, they had a fine dining place. 223 is a fine dining restaurant. No longer exists. 223. It was on Elm Street, right in the middle of our downtown. Had a nice brass bar. It would have things. One of the things I enjoyed from 223 was the drunken figs. They would have figs that were in like a port wine, and you would have that with cheese, drunken figs. And then he had funny things like crispy listeners, which were like pig ears. So crispy and listeners. He's very funny, very witty, full of puns, but full of delicious food. And you could go there for lunch, and you would get a burger with the same razzmatazz that you would get for dinner. And it would have different things. You have a fancy succotash, or these collards that you swear was made by your grandmother, but it was made by this tall white man named Jason. And it was delicious. And we would go there for lunches every day, because every day that we could get down there, because you pay for a $10 burger. I mean, that's what you get at all these franchise places that cooks all their burgers in a microwave. But this was fine dining, good atmosphere. The waiters all know us because we tip well, and my wife would pick me up, take me down there for like a special treat, because otherwise I'd be eating out of the microwave in the back of the embroidery place. And this day she came by, and I don't know if it was something going on or we had a lot of big orders, but I just didn't feel like going. She convinced me to go because she just said food. And that's all it takes for me to go, is to say there's going to be food there and it's going to be paid for by me. It was our money, but hey man, this didn't come out of my pocket right then. So it was basically like a free lunch. And she convinced me to go to lunch, and she came with my favorite, one of my favorite cars, my Jeep Cherokee Grand Laredo. It was a 94, so it was already considerably old, because I gave you the date of the story. You do the math on your own, so I don't talk about my financial situation at the time. But it was an old Jeep Cherokee, and it had issues with like the seat belt where it wouldn't click all the way, but it was a Jeep. And it rode high. I'm a bigger guy, had space, and it looked nice. It was clean on the outside, had little cosmetic issues on the inside, but I had a fancy stereo because I got that with my first job check out of college. Fancy stereo system. And my wife picked me up, and I was trying to convince her that we shouldn't go today. It's raining. We won't enjoy it, but twisted my arm saying, food, burgers, $10. Let's do it. So we got in the car and drove down, and at the time we were waiting on our oldest child, that is often referred to as the boy. He was currently in her belly, and because she was pregnant, I did the classic dad thing or guy thing or husband thing or baby daddy thing and said, let me drive. You've been driving all day, you worked all day, let me just drive. And she said okay. Still didn't have an easy feeling about it, but I drove down. And in Greensboro, when you go downtown, you can catch all of these lights. You get green lights all the way down if you catch it at the right time. And we're catching these green lights. We're going downtown. It's like green light, green light. And I see this one green light, and I got it. And then boom, out of nowhere, I just see the side of a van. And then next thing you know, I feel that I'm moving, and then I'm out. Cold. Sleep, basically. And I wake up, and there's smoke on me. My forearms feel like they're burning a little. And I look to my then pregnant wife, and she gets out the car, and she's cursing up a storm. She's saying, oh poop, oh poop, oh poop, but not saying poop. And she gets out the car, and she's on her phone calling 911 saying, I'm pregnant, my husband is out, and I have a little trickle of blood coming down my forehead. And the reason is that the seatbelt, like I said, didn't really click on that driver's side, and it had come loose, and I had hit my head on the windshield of my car on the inside. But because of the airbag going off and it working so greatly, it had burnt my forearms and with force pushed me back down in my seat. So I just got hit in the forehead enough where I would be unconscious or stunned, but not go through the windshield. And because it was raining, the Jeep spun, so it didn't flip over. The classic thing with Jeeps or SUVs is that they roll over, flip over, an accident, you turn too sharp, blah, 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 blah. But because of this rain, this van that had ran a red light that hit us in a work van, he had no license, he was epileptic, and ran a red light in the work van that he shouldn't have been driving. And because he ran it, we were lucky enough, blessed enough just to hit the side of it. He didn't hit the side of us where we would roll over. I ran into the side of him. I think he ran this red light, and he's going down the street and he's walking away. My wife is chasing the other workers that are going away with the phone, and I'm still trying to figure it out, what's going on. And the guy that drove the van that was like walking away, he circled back around when he saw my wife fussing at the other people saying they were leaving and calling the cops. And he said, oh, my bad, man. Yo bad. I'm here bleeding out my forehead, barely out of it, stuck in this car, in this Jeep, and he's got my bad. That my bad doesn't sum it up. I told him, just get away. Just get away. And he got away. My wife is still on this crime scene, searching, calling people, figuring out what's going on. I'm kind of concerned about her because at this time she is very pregnant. She is at the 8-month stage, so anything can happen. She could be having this baby. Ambulance comes. They get me out. They figure out that I'm fine. And I tell them that I'm a little hurt. I don't know what's going on. Can you help me? And the guy puts me on one of those boards where it just holds your neck because I had a head injury, and he figured I was out of it, which I was. And he just looked at me and said, "Hey, you look familiar. This is the EMS guy. You look familiar." I'm like, "Yeah, I look familiar. I was the guy in the accident about 3 minutes ago. Get me to the hospital immediately, like right now, expeditiously, if you will." And he said, "No, man, you look like that dude, George Huff." I was like, "Who the heck is George Huff?" And George Huff is from American Idol. That helped narrow down the year. I never saw that episode of American Idol, but apparently I look like George Huff when I'm bleeding from my forehead, strapped to a board, with my face all squished up because I got one of those things like he's rescuing me from a ravine or something. And he says, "Yeah, you look like George Huff, man." I was like, "Oh, thank you. Get me to the hospital now." And my wife is just laughing because she done tracked everybody down like Columbo or like Walker, Texas Ranger. So she's in the ambulance with me, and they got to take her to the hospital just because she's pregnant, and it's got to go to a separate one. So we're going to have to make 2 stops. And we're in there, and he asks us like, "So what is your name?" And I'm like, "My name is George." He's like, "No, it's not George Huff. Because my first name is George, last name is Manley, middle name is Thurston, so Thurston J.Y. Manley." But I was like, "It's George," and he just thought it was the funniest thing. He's like, "Oh," I was like, "No, George Manley, put it down." And he writes it down. I was like, "Okay, all right, just check and make sure." I was like, "Just get me to the hospital." As I bleed, and turns out I needed 7 stitches. My wife was fine, and my Jeep was totaled. Yes, it was totaled. Oh, the drama. And I just knew that that feeling I had about leaving or going to that lunch was all because of this. I could have avoided it with the 6th sense. But one thing it did teach me or left me with is realizing that, I got this. Even my boy was fine. I have a job. I can get another car. And we're protected. We're guided. We're protected by God, higher power, whatever you want to believe in. I believe it was God that protected us day to day, because I could have been gone just inches away. And if my wife was maybe driving and that seatbelt incident would have happened, it would have hit her stomach, and our boy wouldn't be here. And that is an amazing thing. And in summation, at that point, we realized we probably should name our oldest child Crash. But we didn't. Thank you very much. This story about my boy, what's wrong with my boy, my 6th sense story, takes place when my child was 8 years old, and we had just moved back from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. We refer to it as we did 2 years in Pittsburgh because we're North Carolina people, and we call it did 2 years, similar to that of a prison stint or an exile from the wonderful state of North Carolina, just because it's so cold in Pittsburgh. And we had just moved back, and I was in a new position with the same wonderful big insurance company. And with this new position, I was going to have to work for 14 weeks without missing any days. And this was going to be a problem because it was the summertime, and my child wanted to go back to this summer camp. This summer camp is the one that he's been going to since he was 5. So 3 years, he's gone for a week every summer. And he's also gone to a couple of the mini camp weekend camps, even from Pittsburgh. This camp is in North Carolina, but we made sure we drove him down to this camp. We were really set on Camp Kanata outside of Wake Forest. North Carolina, which is north of Raleigh, North Carolina. And just to clarify, it is in Wake Forest, North Carolina, the city, as opposed to Wake Forest University, which is in Winston-Salem. It's weird. They bought the school, it moved. Anyway, not important to the story. Camp Kanata, great camp. It's a YMCA camp, and we wanted to make sure he got there. And it wasn't a big deal. My wife got a transfer also. She didn't have the extensive 14 weeks worth of intense training, and she could take him. But I was a little concerned because it was raining. And if you listen to the previous story, when it rains, sometimes you might have a wreck. And I just didn't want them to go and take him there, but it was no other option. So I kind of just went with it. Had a bad feeling that morning about it, but I was like, just be careful and take it slow. Don't rush, leave super early. And my wife said, that's fine. Because if she leaves super early, by super early, I mean like 6 a.m. And this trip should only take 3 hours at the most. At the most, with extreme traffic. We're about 2 hours away from the camp. But if she leaves at 6, she gets there at 9, check-ins at 12. She can actually go see one of our aunts, which she proposed. And our aunt lives in Soul City, which is a neighborhood that is further north of Raleigh-Durham area, and is a town that was created under the President Nixon regime, under the guidance of Floyd McKissick. He had an idea of making this utopia for Black people where they would have their own neighborhood, they would have their own factories, kind of like a Wakanda West, if you will, of the South. So it's Wakanda West South, west of Africa, south of the United States, southern part. And it didn't fully work. It kind of worked, but it didn't fully take off. It's still there. There are warehouses there, but it's not Wakanda-ish at all. But the neighborhood's there, and the people enjoy it. It's further in the country. It's more of a rural area. And our aunt lives in this Soul City because she was one of the original people that moved over there when it was built. And I said, that's fine. And that will take time. It's not like there's dangerous roads there or anything like that. And she went. And I went to work. And I went to training. And I started getting a uneasy feeling in my stomach, almost like when you drink too much coffee, which was weird because I didn't have any coffee that day. So I got a small cup of coffee, and it just was really worried. And maybe I was just thinking about a previous accident that I may have had in the rain, or I don't know what. It's that sixth sense feeling. And they went to the camp, and I texted my wife, and my son texted me back, we okay. And he just sent photos because he didn't know how to work the phone at the time. And so he sent photos, I'm fine. And that was good enough for me. And we started doing the training, and my arm started itching. Then my left arm started itching. Then my upper right part of my arm started itching. And I looked down and I got hives. I've never gotten hives a day in my life. So I'm freaking out. What did I need to do? I waved down the trainer. She tells me just go to the little med kit that we have. And I went to the med kit and I put Neosporin on it because I think it's an allergic reaction or something like that maybe I ate, but I haven't eaten anything weird. And I then put Neosporin on it, and it kind of went away, but they were still coming on. And in my haste, I had ran out of the training class after I got the okay to leave and came back and left my phone. I looked at the phone. First text message I see glaring at me is, on the way to the hospital, only a little blood, we're okay. Hospital. I pick up the phone, don't know what's going on, don't know who's in the hospital, don't know what little blood means. Any blood and hospital really doesn't go together. If there's a little bit of blood and you go into the hospital, it's something broken. So I call and they say, oh, we're fine. We're just going to the hospital. And I'm a little worried because this hospital, because we grew up in this area, and this hospital had that theme, like maybe a local hospital in your area had, like, you know, Kill 'em, Kill a Hill, if the just rhymes with the name, or, you know, Pack 'em in, Pram, something like that. And I was like, okay, why are we going to the hospital? I'm trying to ask in my calm voice because now I've taken my second break. But I knew everything in the training. My trainer was pretty relaxed, but I was in the hallway freaking out like, what is wrong? Apparently, my son was really excited about the camp, decided to show his aunt how good he was at lacrosse, was running around without cleats in a yard that has had rain in it for the last week, slid right into our Dodge Caravan, and because he had his stick in his hand, he wasn't able to brace and hit the side of our Dodge Grand Caravan door with his forehead. Yes, with his forehead, and apparently with enough force, which for some reason my wife decided to add to make me feel better-ish, that it moved the van. So proud of my child. You know, he's an offensive lineman or a running back or a linebacker, but he's 8. He's hit his head inside of the van moved, he has busted the skin open on his head, and he's bleeding. And he didn't cry until the aunt said, "Oh, you're fine," and tried to put a hand on there, and then blood starts shooting up. It's like, "We need to go to the hospital." That's what he said. "We need to go to the hospital now," because the blood shooting out his head like a fountain. They wrap him up in his shirt and put it around his head, take him to the hospital. I get a nice photo of like scrubs and surgeons over him with the injection. Not really surgeons. It was one nurse there with the gloves and injecting him with a needle. And he's sitting there holding his brother's hand, and his brother's telling him at this time, "If they don't get it, I'll take over for you." And that's what he's saying to his brothers, that he'll take over for him, meaning that he will do the surgery if he has to. The younger brother that is 5. So he's trying to shake his head, but he's really moving it with his eyes like, no, you're not taking away anything. And they gave him 7 stitches. And his major concern with these stitches and with this treatment and the fact that blood was shooting out of his head like Niagara Falls flowing down or like a super soaker was, can I still go to camp? Yes. My child slaying so much, why we call him the boy to this day. He still wanted to go to camp. After the stitches, they gave him the okay, saying he could go to camp. And he had a good trip. He had a good camp. I did not, because those hives from my 6th sense went down after he finally got to the camp, sure enough, and gave him the okay later that day. And we just told all the people at the camp to watch out for him, see if he gets any of those concussion symptoms, because, you know, CTE is real, especially at the camp. But he made it. And I'm so proud of him for being so strong. That's my boy. And now, because of those stitches, we now have a matching set of stitches. We both have Y's on our forehead, almost like Harry Potter stuff. Because in a car wreck, I had a windshield, and he wrecked the car. And that's why we wanted to call him Crash. Thank you guys. Hope you enjoyed the stories. Stay around. I'm going to give a nice little wrap up to the stories and my take on fast food places. Thank you. Well, you made it to the end of my 2 stories for this week's episode of Manly Mythical Story Emporium. I really appreciate you guys listening. I got a couple of international listeners out there in Italy and Ireland. I appreciate you the most. Not really the most, but I do appreciate you. And I appreciate those that are continuing to listen. Please listen, follow, like, rate, and subscribe. But before I let you go, I like to give you a second on So I was thinking. I was thinking that I've had to put more investment into ordering food during this quarantine because of Uber Eats, Grubhub, all that stuff. And I'm really looking at these places, these fast food places, because my wife loves to cook, but it's kind of hard to continuously cook at home, back to back, and do your job and take care of the kids. And we've looked at these restaurants and we've looked at these same names over and over again. And I realized that Arby's is kind of if you were to list these restaurants and make them people and or addictions, or at the same time addicts, Arby's is kind of like the crackheads of the fast food industry because they be trying to slip in like 5 roast beefs for $5. Like, how do you do that? That's crackhead prices. And what is horsey sauce? How does horsey sauce even exist? Does horseradish sound so bad that you had to change it to horsey sauce? And what is a Jamocha shake? You don't just have chocolate. You are not like a Baskin Robbins. You are not an ice cream place. Why does Jamocha a flavor? You're gonna make a coffee shake. You're gonna try to be different. You only offer like 2 shakes. I think it's Jamocha and vanilla. How do you go to that? It needs to be vanilla and chocolate if you even offer a shake. At least your machine works compared to McDonald's. Yeah, McDonald's, to go to them, I think they are more like your acid droppers because they got a freaking fry kids running around, a red guy with a red wig on, a red nose looking all creepy with red shoes. He's not even like full clown. He's like, if you were to take a bear and make him walk around like the Bernstein Bears, he's like that of clown. So he's not even fully clown. He's like almost human clown. So he's not even a clown. I mean, he's like it, but like more towards like, oh, this is normal that this clown is walking around here. And then Sonic, if you don't have Sonic, the best way I could describe Sonic is like the meth lab cookers. So they are like the Breaking Bad of food because they got a drink where they just put Starburst in. They like Starburst and Jolly Ranchers. You gonna just crush up candy and throw it in a soda and then be like, yo, you don't even have to come in. We're gonna roll this on out to you. Just pull up to one of them poles with the order thing and bring it to you. But at least their desserts make more sense than Arby's because Arby's give me them cherry turnovers. Is it even yeah, they do cherry turnovers and they're all flaky and they get all over you, and then you walk out looking like you got the plague on you, like you got that stuff just flaking all off on you. It doesn't make sense. But that's my opinion on it. That's just what I was thinking, is that Arby's is the crackhead, Sonic is the meth lab, and then McDonald's is probably yeah, McDonald's is definitely the trippy ones, the acid droppers. Because, I mean, they got Grimace and they got like a burglar. The hamburger. He's just stealing your food. And then Burger King just got a big-headed king guy walking around not saying nothing. Makes no sense. That's why I just stick, I don't know where I go. I just stick with Chick-fil-A maybe. They ain't even open on Sundays. But their political views are interesting. But them fries, oof. And them lemonades, go for it. That's just what I was thinking. Enjoy. Please follow me on Instagram. Like and review. Send me any show ideas. Thanks, guys. Enjoy.